in prisons with people who have been incarcerated. It is going to be a beautiful show. Thank you so much to the LaFawn Center for bringing Matt to us. This is such a special treat. All right. There will be a Q&A afterwards, so I encourage you all to ask questions. We're only going to have Matt here for this evening, so please take advantage of it. All right. We're going to watch a quick video, and then Matt's going to get going. Thank you.
I think I asked too many questions, and I know I'll never understand.
I just didn't think I fit anywhere I was, you know, and recklessness was a way of like claiming an identity for myself.
Me and my father had fought my whole life, and I was never good enough.
I also thought about my son that I lost.
The reckless son, that's what I am. I feel like I'm a disappointment to my family, everybody that love me. It's time for me to be a man.
If I can help just one, then he can help just one.
Problems that we face are far too large for any one person to solve, but I'm grateful I've been shown a way to do my share. And that's what I was always looking for.
He did something to my soul today, and just kind of poured these emotions out that I haven't felt that bottled up for years. It's just stuff that needed to come out.
This was my first concert. I didn't realize that I would be crying the entire time.
At the beginning that you were hoping to make an impact on at least one person, and I want you to know that you truly came, and I think you made an impact on everybody here today, and we appreciate you a lot.
Everywhere I go, there are more of us, more lost boys. And when I listen to them, concerts become like conversations. And what I see and what I hear, I put into these songs.
We can help just one.
Well, there's no one on that side, so this is easier. Just do this. It'll be better for my neck by the end of this show. My name's Matt Butler, and I'm a singer-songwriter from New York City. And I've been playing music inside jails and in prisons all around the country for about 10 years now. Ever since I started doing it, I felt compelled to want to tell the stories of the people that I met doing this work. And I wrote this performance about 3 years ago with the intention of performing it for the public, not for the incarcerated, but I actually have worked this out and workshopped this performance in Oregon State Penitentiary and Otisville State Prison in New York. And so this is a work that was sort of done with the participation of the incarcerated, and I actually do continue to play it for them regularly. And just yesterday was in the Ascension Parish Jail and had the opportunity to play it for the men there, and it was wonderful. And this looks a lot different than that. And I'm really excited and honored to be performing for you all tonight. And music therapy students, I think what you are doing and aspire to be doing is incredible. And I don't come to this from that background. I don't have any particular training in it, but I am very eager to learn about what you all do. And so hopefully, if the show doesn't put you all to sleep and you're still here for the Q&A, you know, I'd really like the opportunity to learn from you guys as well. So I hope we can do that. I have this whole stand just for my bottle of water here, man. So typically, when I do this for an incarcerated audience, or a public audience, it begins with me saying something like this. Every time I walk into a jail or a prison, I feel afraid. You know, I feel small. I doubt myself. I feel silly for presuming that I can walk in there with a guitar and make some kind of a difference for somebody. But the thing that gets me through that fear, you know, is the thought that if just one person gets something out of that gig, if just one person connects with it, or feels seen, or feels heard, or feels just a little less alone, then it's worth it. Not just that gig, but everything that has ever led up to it is worth it. I grew up in a quiet town. Most folks don't wanna stick around, except a guy like my dad. Yeah, hometown pride's all he ever had. When I was a boy, one night he came home, said I lost my job and your mama's gone. He pressed that bottle into my hand, looked me in the eyes and he said, son, it's time to be a man. Well, for as long as I can remember, I felt like a child sleepwalking through my life with no real sense of purpose, no sense of who I am or my place in this world. Tonight I'm going to tell you the story of what happened when I met some people who felt the same way. It all started in November of 2016 when I played a concert in the sheriff's heroin addiction recovery program at the Albany County Jail. It was called the Sharp Unit. Now, I have no real criminal background. I got arrested once at the end of my senior year of high school, and I got out of central bookings just in time to make it to my graduation ceremony, but a bit of a heart attack from my parents was about the worst thing that came out of it. Despite not having any real street cred, when I walked into that jail and started singing, the men of that Sharp Unit, they started to listen. You know, it was the songs I was singing that connected us. It was the songs that let them know we really did have something in common. And after that show, something in me was activated. It was like a switch flipped, and I knew I would never be the same. And shortly after, the sheriff and some local news crews, they started spreading the word, and I got invitations to perform at another jail, at another prison. Before I knew it, there was this whole network of people that were putting me up, shipping me out, all over the country. When I turned 16, I dropped out of school. I was never any good at following the rules. I started selling pills to pay my rent. I started taking them too, and I've been doing it ever since, till I got busted in some parking lot. Cop said, guys like me either die or get caught, and he locked those cuffs around my hands. He looked me in the eyes and he said, son, well, it's time to be a man. Ah, yeah, time to be a man. Yeah, oh yeah, it's time to choose, boy, it's time to take a stand. Yeah, he said it's time to find out who I really am. Time to be a man. Ah, yeah, time to be a man. Yeah. Thank you very much. So, just a few miles from that SHARP unit is this addiction treatment center for teens. And it was scary walking into this gymnasium and pulling up a little plastic folding chair and sitting down in front of these kids looking at me like I was this hippie who was going to play American Pie for them or something like that. You know, I went this morning to a place called the Landry Center, the Landry Alternative Center, and played for kids there. You know, it wasn't a life facility or a treatment center, but it was like the same thing, man. Like, just playing for teenagers is difficult. I'm sure there are teenagers here. I don't know what age group this is, but something about this feels a little less scary than that, like straight up high school. But kids and prisoners have a lot in common, actually. They're the best bullshit detectors of any people out there, in my opinion. And they can be tough audiences, but it was a wonderful thing today. So when I went to this place, like I said, stood in front of them like so I was this campfire singer or something. You know, they'd look at me like they were just way too cool for the whole thing. They'd sort of slide back in their chairs. They'd throw their hoodies up over their heads. But you would be genuinely surprised at the tenderness that can occur in these places, these battlefield hospitals for what seems like an entire generation of kids fighting a war. You'll see one of them reach around and put their arm around the kid next to them when they know the song is really hitting them hard. And there was this one tall kid with a buzz cut who looked like he could have been some kind of team captain with the basketball tracksuit he had on, and he came up to me after the show. You know, I think he got hit harder than anybody else in that place. He came up and he said, "Hey man, you know that song you played about your mom? That song killed me." The same thing happened to me. Now, when I write a song, I take on a character, and sometimes that character is me, and sometimes it isn't. But no matter how convincing of a lyric I write, if that lyric isn't based on some nugget of the truth, then it isn't going to work. You know, and so this young man, this boy, really told me that the same thing had happened to him. I knew it couldn't be true. Our stories were too different. And in my songs, at this point, I have blurred the lines of fact and fiction so much that I think I've actually started to forget what's true. The characters in my song, where they start, where I begin, is not clear to me any longer. But I do know that when I was this kid's age, I was angry. I know that before I learned to numb myself with a drink or with drugs, I was in pain. I used to punch holes in my bedroom walls. I used to stamp cigarettes out of my arms, and I used to cut myself with broken glass, and all you have to do is start rolling back my sleeves to see it. You know, all those scars are still there. So I knew that when this kid came up to me to tell me that when he was out on a run and out of money in the snow and in the cold with nowhere to sleep, I knew for a fact it was true. That he got on his bike and he rode the 37 miles between Albany and Saratoga Springs so that he could sleep under his mother's porch in the mud with dead mice. And I knew it was true that when his stepfather wasn't looking, his mom would slip a tent out the window for him with a $20 bill inside. And I knew it was true that no matter how cold or how hungry he was, he would still use that $20 to get high. And I know that because it's what I would have done. When I heard that story, it made me want to run home to my own mom and cry. But the truth is that no matter how hard they try, and they will, there are some things that even moms can't fix. She said her mama died on the cross, wearing pearls and an albatross, with Jesus and a benzo in a brain. On Easter Sunday they laid it down. So when I'm broke, that's when I'll come around to avail myself of all my mother's pain. Mama let me in to take a shower. Mama let me in to clean my clothes. Mama let me in to wash away the sin. Yeah, but like Good Friday, Mom, I'll come and I'll go. Under a scaffold far below, high as hell, nowhere to go. I watched her sitting with a book between her hands, choking on some fresh regrets and electronic menthol cigarettes, praying that one day I'd understand. Mama let me in to take a shower. Mama let me in to clean my clothes. And Mama let me in to wash away the sin. Yeah, but like Good Friday, Mama, I'll come and I'll go. Well, then I guess that's why you always tell me no. 'Cause you can't help and I can't help myself at all. Your boy is just another junkie on the street. If this is hell and every angel has to fall, well, I'll be crawling on for one more score with nails right through my feet. Mama let me in to take a shower, yeah. Mama let me in to clean my clothes. Whoa. Mama let me in to wash away the sin. Yeah, but like Good Friday, Mama, I'll come and I'll go. Well, then I know that's why you had to tell me no. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So when I first started doing these shows in jails and in prisons, occasionally certain facilities would let me take videos, and if the sheriff or the warden there approved, we would post clips to social media. And that's how this whole thing got started for me. Folks would share these posts, and word would spread to one sheriff or a social worker, and I'd get an invitation to play in another jail or another prison. You know, and out of all those videos, there was this one that got a lot of attention. It was like my first little viral video, and so that's how I ended up doing so much of this. But this was a video of me performing in the women's unit of the Chesterfield County Jail, Virginia. And I was sitting on top of this big metal table that's bolted into the ground, and the women were sitting in a big circle around me. And right when I got to the chorus of this song, they just erupted into this massive applause as if I were Harry Styles or Justin Bieber or somebody like that. I don't know who's cool these days. I thought the most current that I know about is Harry Styles. He's not a huge influence on my work, but I respect him. So that video was as big as I've ever gotten, and when it went up, it got all kinds of reshares and reposts and things like that, but it also brought in a ton of direct messages. My inbox kind of blew up at that period of time, but out of all of those messages, there's only one that I remember from that time, and still when I think about it, it's still heartbreaking for me. This young woman very kindly reached out to me and said that she had been watching this video on repeat so that she could listen to the song on repeat. Her husband had just committed suicide in a county jail, and they had a 3-year-old son together. You know, and she told me that she was meant to hear this song because it described how she knew her husband must have felt. Now, I can't explain that to you because I wrote the song way before I ever heard this woman's story. You know, but I found out soon enough that it wasn't any kind of news story. It turns out that the suicide rates for the incarcerated are far higher than national averages. And according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, over the last 20 years, the number of suicides in state prisons has gone up by 85%. But I didn't know that at the time either. When I wrote this song, I didn't have any stats. What I had when I wrote this was an intimate familiarity with the feeling of hopelessness. You know, I was well acquainted with a voice in my head that tells me I am unfit for the world and that no matter what, I can't do anything right. You know, and that voice is always there. You know, it's with me today. I can hear that voice right now. You know, and it tells me that I've failed all the people that I've ever loved. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm bound to keep failing them. Now, I imagine that that woman's husband heard the same voice in his head while he was lying there in his cell, but ironically, it's the fact that I hear that voice that allowed me to write the song that would eventually bring his wife some comfort. And I think sometimes, you know, there's comfort in that too. Don't try to lie or to pretend. Everybody knew that I would end up here again, and I might have even felt relief if only Lucy wasn't counting on me. But don't let her see me in this place, and don't make me have to see that look on her face. And so here's what I need you to do. First tell her that I'm sorry, she's gotta hear this from you. And tell Lucy that I love her, but I'm not what she needs. And tell her I said she's better off without me. And tell Lucy that I love her, that I've gotta set her free. Tell Lucy not to worry. Tell her not to worry about me. Then give her everything I own, and tell her to find someone and try to make a home. Then tell her everything I've done, all the reasons why I can't be a father to a son. And tell Lucy that I love her, that I'm not what she needs. And tell her I said she's better off without me. And tell Lucy that I love her, that that's all it's gonna be. Tell Lucy not to tell him. Tell her not to tell him about me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell her not to tell him about me. No. Tell her not to tell him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell her not to tell him about me. No. Tell her not to tell him about me. Sorry, having a little technical issue. I think we got it. So I was on the road for a very, very long time. I was like one of those 1930s Depression era hobos. You know, the guys that carry bindle sticks over their shoulders like this and have like a big piece of hay sticking out of their mouth. Except the big difference between me and them is that I had an iPhone. The iPhone makes the whole cross-country vagabond experience much more manageable endeavor, even Instagrammable. So with an assortment of very colorful and eccentric traveling companions, I made my way around the country. And driving up and down the East Coast, I can remember these long, lazy afternoons on the Chesapeake Bay. It was dark. Eerie nights in Georgia that would get so misty you could barely see the ground through the motel porch lights. And cutting through the Midwest would be these gorgeous horse farms all across Kentucky, and then these wide open fields in Ohio that were just filled to the brim with cows. Yeah, cows, man. If you grew up like me on 23rd Street and 8th Avenue in Manhattan, the first time you see a field full of cows in Ohio, it's like, it's a religious experience. But what stuck with me the most was driving through the desert, the prairies and the deserts of the Southwest, Texas, and Utah. I spent a lot of time just sitting in the passenger seat, staring out the window until my eyes hurt, trying to somehow absorb and internalize that landscape. I would stare for so long that my eyes would start to play tricks on me, and the surface of the desert would turn from a horizontal plane into the vertical face of a cliff. And the desert would turn into something that had to be climbed rather than crossed. And the sun glided across the infinite horizon, reflecting a vast, unshattered whiteness across the endless salt flats. A whiteness that is nearly as blinding as the industrial sodium lamps in the holding cage of the DeKalb County Jail just a few towns back. Lights that are on 24 hours a day, even more relentless than the desert sun. Makes the inmates there do something very strange. What they do is they actually push all their bunk beds together against the wall, and then they swing blankets over the top bunk to create a blackout screen for the bottom bunk. You know, it scared me and freaked me out when I first saw them kind of scuttling in and out of these things like some kind of cave dwellers. You know, and what makes it worse is that the air conditioning there is actually pumped in at max, so the place is like a giant meat locker. You know, it makes it nearly impossible to sleep. It just forces them deeper and deeper into these caves that they've created. Staring out the car window, imagining that the phosphorescent specks on either side of the highway were the bleaching bones of some long-deceased buffalo. I realized I was losing perspective on more than just the road. I was losing perspective on the suffering. Couldn't tell you what it was for. How long will this last? Oh Lord, how many times will I ask? My well is run dry. There ain't a cloud in the sky. My body's aching. All of the years I've carried this curse, and the weather ain't breaking. Oh Lord, I've just got to quench my thirst. I'm praying for rain. I'm praying for the purpose in all of shedding these tears in vain. I don't know what to say, so just name your price, I'll be happy to pay. I don't know what to do. Can you hear me, Lord? I'm talking to you. 'Cause nothing is changing, and I still feel like I'm alone, and the soil is baking. There's no water for all of the seeds I've sown. I'm praying for rain. I'm praying for the purpose in all of this pain. I'm praying for rain, and that I'm not shedding these tears in vain. Not shedding these tears in vain. I'm not shedding these tears. Thank you very much. I'm gonna just quickly, oh wait, that might have been, yeah, so there's something going on with the DI. I'm not sure if it's the guitar or if it's, but I might try getting a different cable. So, thank you very much. When you play in prisons with no PA system, this never happens, you know? Thanks, man. Hopefully this will have fixed it. Oh wait, I think he's taking, that's my cable he's stealing. Hey Diego?
Yeah?
Oh.
Yeah,
It's like a magic show. So
I'm gonna go turn it on.
that's my cable, by the way.
Okay,
There's too many moving parts with this, man. You're all very patient. It's very appreciated. I think it's working. Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Back to the show. So on this very hot day out in the yard of this county detention center in Virginia, a guard introduced me to this very cool-looking young inmate with a square jaw and this kind of slick-back greaser haircut. This kid, AJ, was handsome, even though he was missing most of his back teeth, which was obvious every time he laughed or every time he smiled. And before she introduced us, the guard told me he had just found out the day before his oldest brother had died of an overdose, and he was heartbroken because he was in there and he was going to have to miss his brother's service. You see, AJ had been arrested when he was 17 years old, and he was now halfway through a 4-year sentence. You know, before that, he spent most of his life in juvenile facilities, and he had no idea what he was going to do for work when he got out, because the only job he had ever had was a job cutting lumber, where he and everyone he ever worked with got high on amphetamines. And the rest of his brothers were either dead, in jail, or strung out. His mom was a heroin addict, and he hadn't seen his mom in years. And that's when he let slip what I thought was actually the most profound detail of his entire story. And of course, he skimmed over it like it meant nothing. But it turns out that AJ didn't know how to read. As if the deck were not going to be stacked against this kid enough when he got out of that place. He told me this whole story over the sound of the guards there doing taser practice in the yard, so each sentence of his was punctuated by the thuds of these wired prongs pummeling canvas target dummies. But to AJ, that was just the sound of home. Last time I was on these streets, I was only 17 years old. But in the eyes of the law, that was old enough to be tried as an adult. Now after all these years, the folks round here still remember who I am. Sometimes I catch them watching me close, or they just act like they don't give a damn. 'Cause Lord, I've been gone so long. Now this place don't feel like home. I've been gone so long. All I want is to move on. Well, early in the morning I go looking for work. I bum right since I lost my car. I hitch a couple miles to my P.O. just to tell him no luck so far. I served my time and I paid my debt, but there's always something more I owe. Yeah, it seems like all I can do is what I've always done and just go back to what I know. 'Cause Lord, I've been gone so long. Now this place don't feel like home. I've been gone so long. All I want is to move on. All I want is to move on. Thank you. So CCI. CCI stands for Chillicothe Correctional Institution, or Chili for short, which is a nickname that takes on a sense of menace when I realized that at the time I was there, it was the place where Ohio was sending the guys that were sentenced to death. And even though the death row guys were not allowed to attend the concert, I can tell you that that's a place that doesn't let you forget that they're there. They are just right across the yard. For a visual reference, and I will date myself here, but the movie The Shawshank Redemption, I don't know if anyone's seen that. I don't even know if kids watch movies anymore. Yeah. Well, I have joined your ranks. The Shawshank Redemption was filmed at the old Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, which is a facility identical to the facility at Chillicothe. So if you've seen The Shawshank Redemption, you know what this show looked like. After I entered through these Gothic prison gates, I got brought into an auditorium that looked as if nothing had been changed since the 1950s. There were these wooden stadium seats, this old wooden stage, just kind of chewed up. It had these faded Ohio State flags behind it. And the men there, they entered, they were wearing denim pants, they had short sleeve collared work shirts on, mostly these kind of high and tight haircuts, but some of them will have these long, thick braids, kind of greased back ponytails and stuff like that. It's a lot of neck tattoos. It's a lot of knuckle tattoos. It's a lot of face tattoos. It's a very different crowd today. Not a lot of face tattoos in this room that I can see. And these guys, they sat down very, very calmly, and they looked at me, and they sized me up in a way that I have never been sized up before in my life. But what do you do in that situation? Just play. You just play. Play the songs. I played one song after another for them, and I spilled my guts to them in between. I told them every horrible secret that I had. I told them every horrible thing that I ever did. All in this desperate but truly sincere attempt to win their trust, to receive my own forgiveness, absolution. Towards the end of the show, I got ready to play a song about my dad, but first, I told them about the night where my father and I almost killed each other. I told them about this wound in my heart that I felt would never heal, and I told them about things that I had done that I was sure I could not make right. And when I finally started to play, I got choked up. And like a amateur, I just stopped in the middle of the song. And then I apologized to them. And then I asked them for permission to start over. This guy sitting in the front row of the auditorium, he's just covered in tattoos, looks up at me with this kind of sly smile, and turns to everybody else in the room. He turns back to me and he says, "Well, we all make mistakes." Now that story can make you want to laugh, or that story can make you want to cry, depending on how you think about it. But at the time, I will tell you, when he said that, the roof blew off of Chillicothe Correctional Institution with laughter, and everybody's hearts got lighter. I will always be grateful to those men, to the reckless sons at Chillicothe, because it was after that gig that I knew what I had to do. It was finally time for me to go home. Well, I've been trying to talk with my old man. He says he knows me better than I'll ever understand. But still he can't explain the things I've done, or what it's like to be the father of a reckless son. And for all the years I made sure I was numb, all the liquored up conversations where I played deaf and dumb. And for all the screaming angels in my heart and in my head, not a word was spoken until my father said, "I can't hide you from your own hands or lift you from your knees, but I'm preparing myself to have to dig your grave. We'll both be humbled by the will of God and the wrath of your disease. But how could any man have to be so brave to know that nothing can be done?" For the father of a reckless son, alone inside a family where we pass around the blame, where you can keep your interventions. All you gave me was my name, and waiting for the moment where I can meet you with my fists. But punishing myself was the only thorn that I could twist. 'Cause you can't hide me from my own hands or my knees, and you're preparing yourself to have to walk away. But be humbled by the will of God and the power of our needs, and all that's left for you to do is pray for all the battles that you won. You're the father of a reckless son, and I know you've had to see me walk into the rain. Oh, and you knew you couldn't pull me back. Oh, but your love was never shown to me in vain. You put your arms around me, and the walls began to crack. Oh, but I know I'm the only one who can do what must be done. So with every breath in my lungs, hear the promise of a reckless son. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hear the promise of a reckless son. Thank you very much. So the road back home took courage. It meant risking rejection and disappointment and failure. You know, it meant exposing myself once again to the pain of hope. You know, I have often hoped for the wrong things. Poet T.S. Eliot, he tells us to wait without hope, for it would be hope for the wrong things. You know, but Eliot also says that we shall not cease from exploration, and that the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. But when I got back, it wasn't my home that I was seeing for the first time. It wasn't my home that I didn't recognize. It was myself that I was seeing for the first time. Now, I am no T.S. Eliot, but I wrote my own poem about hope, and I'd like to share it. Little poetry. For what is hope but something yet to be? What is a dream if only a demand? Embracing love in all its sovereignty, the tender heart must break to then expand. And what is faith if only but a light, reflecting what's remaining to be purged in realms of darkness hidden out of sight, and depths where hell and heaven do converge? And being asked to trust what's unresolved, to linger in this doubtful space between, I resurrect before I've been absolved, embodied evidence of the unseen. For what is hope but something yet to be? For what is hope but nothing more than me? There's ash in my mouth and dust on my skin, mud on my knees and blood on my shins. Oh, and another dead end means it's time to begin. The road back home to St. Christopher's Inn. And now folks look at me like I'm destined to lose, with my track marks and Jesus Christ tattoos. Oh, but I'm too tired to tell them to walk in my shoes. So I'm going where a man is never refused. Oh, but I feel, never feel free, and sick and tired is all I'll ever be. Then he grips me so tightly I barely can breathe. Oh, merciful Lord, please take this from me. Now every time that I rise from the dead, St. Anthony's cross hangs over my bed, and the prayer of St. Francis is stuck in my head. I've been there before, I'm going again. Yeah, I know, but I feel, I'll never feel free, and sick and tired is all I'll ever be. But then he grips me so tightly I barely can breathe. Oh, merciful Lord, take this from me. But the hope that sustains me comes deep from within. And God loves the sinners, 'cause God's in the sin. And I am who I am 'cause of where I have been. On the road back home to St. Christopher's Inn. Yes, I'm going back home to St. Christopher's Inn. Thank you very much. So one of the last stops I make on my way back is in the desert, right outside of Salt Lake City. It's this transitional housing facility, a place that supports the formerly incarcerated making their way back into society. And at this point, that is exactly how I felt like I was going to need some serious help making my way back into society. The men there, they live in a few large bunkhouses. They work together, they cook together, and they eat together. And when I arrived, they were in the middle of having this absolutely epic cookout. There were these huge metal vats of chili set out on folding tables with big spreads of all the chili fixings lined up along the walls of this dining hall that would only hours later become the concert hall. And I was greeted with unbelievable warmth and smiles. And there is nothing more soothing for road weariness than a home-cooked meal and genuine, unself-conscious hospitality. Kindness of strangers is a holy thing. And when you experience it, it changes you. When you need it and you get it, it changes everything. You know, and this place was pretty wild. It was boisterous. I got sat at the head of a long table in a room of maybe 60 or 70 or 80 guys that were just crushing bowl after bowl of chili. It was like the food never stopped coming out in that place. And I remember thinking to myself that I would have been happy if that dinner had never ended. And I realized I just didn't want any of it to end. You know, and there's always a little part of me that would like to be back at that table at that moment. You know, and when I stood there listening to the men on the other side of this bunkhouse wall, I could I could feel their closeness, their camaraderie, this total lack of pretentiousness that exists in a place like that. You see, the energy in a place like that is electric because life is raw. Things are very, very simple. You know, in my experience, people who've lost everything or have had everything taken away from them are often the ones that are really in touch with the things that matter the most. And it really is laughter and friendship and kindness and hot chili after a long day of honest work, you know? That was the best bowl of chili I'd ever had in my life. And when I stood there on the other side of that wall, listening to those men, when I stood there getting ready to grab my guitar and go to work, well, that's when it hit me, you know? This thing that I was doing, maybe you'll be doing, was a calling. I understood in that moment, in a lifetime of feeling useless, like I was just on this planet to take up space, I realized I had a purpose, and it was just as simple as trying to help people. I can't tell you why, but jails, prisons, these places that are on the margins of things, the fringes of society, these are the first places where I ever felt genuinely accepted. You know, like there was something that I could do to contribute. It was out there in the desert. It was out there on the road with these new brothers. I felt my life finally begin. Well, on deck aboard a pilot boat, we waited for the light. Heart closed, we warmed our hands, breathing fog into the night. Through ancient ways of navigation, following a star. Oh, brother, I can't tell you where you're going, but I know just where you are. 'Cause every time I close my eyes, I sink into a sleep, I stare across the sky. I hear the sound of your heartbeat. I see the man that you become, following a dream, dream, dream. Skate across the ocean like a figure on the ice. The waves will come crashing down like tumbling dice. Place no faith in destinations, be they near or far. Oh, brother, I can't tell you where you're going, but I know just who you are. Oh, 'cause I watched you as you've grown up tall, humble in your rising and gracious in a fall. You'll see the world, you'll see it all. It's the man that you've become, in service of a call. Just listen for your call. Yeah, yeah. Oh. So I played hundreds and hundreds of concerts in jails and in prisons everywhere from Rikers Island to San Quentin to the Gunnison prison in the middle of the Utah desert. And everywhere I go, there are more of us. There are more reckless sons, plenty of reckless daughters out there too. And when I had the opportunity to listen to them, the concerts became more like conversations. And the things that I saw and heard and felt, I have tried to put into these songs. You know, they told me stories, and now I want to tell you stories so that we can continue to bring healing through the arts, through music, to those behind the walls, and really to anybody who needs it. You know, the problems that we face are overwhelming and too large for any one person to solve. But I'm grateful that I've been shown a way to just do my share. You know, and that's the thing that I was always looking for. That was the thing that was always missing for me. You know, and I don't do this to pay a debt. And I don't do it because I've been sentenced to it. I do this because it sets me free. And if just one person gets something out of the show, if just one person connects, or feels seen, or feels heard, or feels a little less alone that day, it's worth it. I think I asked too many questions. I know I'll never understand how to help all those around me. I am just one man. And there's so many who feel helpless, that there's just too much to be done. But I know it makes all the difference. That revolution has begun. If I can help just one, and he can help just one, and she can help just one, and if we can help just one, I'll put my heart into my labor. I'll burn my back under the sun, yeah. I'll share the harvest, all my neighbors. I'll work until my hands are numb. And if I can help just one, and you can help just one, and she can help just one, help just one. Just one. Yeah, and that's my show for you. Thank you very much. It's awkward. So, I don't know if any of you guys have any questions or anything that you want to share about what came up during the show or anything like that, but I'm very happy to do that. So, who would like to be the first one?
Well, I remember that you described how you felt the first time you went into a prison, but how did you talk about how you first started performing in prisons?
I worked on a film. I worked on music for a film many years ago about teenagers in recovery high schools.
Right.
So teenagers that are struggling with substance abuse and mental health issues, and I met so many people through that experience of sort of promoting the film and touring with the film and stuff like that. And at one point I saw a video on social media, on Facebook, of men singing in a heroin program in prison. And it kind of occurred to me that
maybe some of the music that I had written for the film and about some of my own experiences might resonate in that environment. And I was surrounded by people who could facilitate that kind of a thing at that point in time. So like I mentioned it to somebody, and then within 2 weeks, you know, they had asked me to come to the Albany County Jail's heroin program, and then I played that show, and it was really life-changing. And then 10 years later, it's been a lot of prisons, a lot of jails, a lot of prisons. Yeah. Thank you very much. Jasmine.
Where do you think you would have ended up if not doing this?
Oh my God, I don't know. The last thing I did before sort of going back to playing music more full-time was working as a copywriter at an ad agency, which I didn't like very much. No, I mean, not to discourage anybody who wants to do that, but it wasn't really my thing. I don't know, I had a million little odd jobs and crazy things. I never really found my groove in life. I still really don't think I have in a lot of ways, you know. I don't really, surprises me that I've made it this far, as far as like just making it through life, but I don't know. I mean, I grew up playing music. I always played music my whole life. I started playing music professionally when I was like 15 years old, you know, and so, and it was like the Mafia and Godfather. It was like I tried to leave and it brought me back all the time, you know. I'd sort of almost unintentionally kind of stumble back into playing music. But in school, I studied literature and film, and so if I were able to kind of keep my life together, if I wasn't playing music, I think I would have gone into film or writing more full time. But this has changed my life in a million ways. You know, like I never planned any of it. A great friend of mine, who sadly passed away, said to me once, that he thought it was amazing that I allowed this to happen rather than made it happen. But it was something that it was like a sort of a slipstream in my life opened up. And, you know, no pun intended, doors were opening for me. And unfortunately, I don't have, you know, credentialing or training, but for whatever reason, people were asking me to come to prison all over the place. And so I just went with it. And it was so appealing on so many levels. And I've taken a long time to answer your question here at this point, but I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. Write ad copy. Yeah, hopefully something other than that. Yes.
How many prisons have you performed and spoke at, and what states?
I don't know. I have a list of when I started to keep track. So yesterday was the 56th correctional facility that I've worked in, but I don't have an answer to that question because I did this for so long without really thinking about it. And I did it very informally, and it was, you know, for a while it was just me traveling, and if you can believe this, I don't really drive very well. I wasn't driving at the time. I don't really see very well, and so I was just kind of on trains and buses and getting in cars with strangers and driving all over the place, and then eventually, you know, me and this sort of crazy guy named Mario kind of teamed up, and we spent a long time on the road together, and he was an ex-con and knew all kinds of people, and I mean, it was a very Kerouacian kind of thing, you know, and we liked it that way. That was what we wanted it to be. But to answer your question, I don't know, unfortunately. Oh, hey, Annie.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Hi. Thank you so much for your show. I really appreciate how you weave together like the music with also like people's stories and like statistics to like bring to light like issues at the same time. That you're giving us this like really meaningful performance. I really appreciated that. You kind of got to the question I had this your last answer, but I was just incarcerated musicians or formerly incarcerated musicians in the time you've been doing this?
Yeah, so my focus was never really like songwriting classes or writing classes or like creating a product. What it mostly looked like when I was really doing this, like in the years that this show is based on, is that I would go into a place where I had no idea where I was going into, what the environment would be like, what the setup would be, and I had no plan, but I had a handful of songs, and I would play them. I would play a song, and I would tell a story about myself, and then I would wait for someone to say something else. And then someone would share a story, and then I would play another song, and it would sort of unlock something else in the group. And so what it ended up looking like was more of like some kind of a group processing thing, you know, and then I would try to guide it and facilitate it, and then the more I did it, the more songs I wrote, and kind of the more stuff on my belt I had. And but it was never really like intended to like leave with like a product as far as like songs. But I have done Reckless Sun where formerly incarcerated guys from facilities in the community I'll play at will come on stage and perform songs that they wrote, oftentimes that they wrote inside. I have this like learning guide that I've created for students when I do Reckless Sun, and so there's a lot of that's sort of collaborative in that way. And I love working on songwriting and poetry and stuff like that, so it's something that I would love to do and figure out. I've never really formalized or codified this process for myself in a lot of ways. You know, it's like pretty cowboy kind of thing, and like, but the more I do it, the more I sort of figure out. I mean, like the fact that I'm just here today is indicative that something is sort of developing in some way, rather than me sleeping on a couch and playing at Grundy County Jail in Southeast Tennessee, you know, like, but again, these are long answers to these questions, but I think that's something of that kind is the end goal, but you know, it's like songwriting is like not everybody's thing, you know, so like not everybody's gonna want to like sort of find their voice or can find their voice writing a song. I think one of the things that I try to do, someone asked me today when I was at the Landry Center, they said, why are you here playing for them? And I said, well, I think it's important to show kids, especially in this situation, like an example of like how to find your own voice in something. Like, and how to like find agency through developing a voice, whether that's like literal singing voice, or whether that's writing, or whether that's something entrepreneurial or whatever it is, but like, by showing up to play and sort of putting that forward, it was clearly a way that I had processed something. So I think the idea was to say like this is what I've done to communicate, you know, and communicating is really the heart of it, right? So, but I'd love to do all that stuff. I love to work with songwriters and things like that. Yeah. Does anybody?
Can you talk about the way you write lyrics and like getting comfortable expressing yourself through lyrics to strangers?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's just not. I don't ever expect it's gonna be, you know? And like some of those songs, that second song I played, Good Friday, the one about my mom, like the first time I went and played that in public at Rockwood Music Hall and, you know, down on Allen Street in New York, I was like, holy shit, these people are gonna think I am a freak, you know? Like, and it wasn't as big of a deal to them as it was to me. It wasn't like everybody was like, I mean, sometimes people react very strongly to that song, but like this is scary to me. Tonight, this is scary to me. Like, that's part of what this is for me, is like, I think art, not all art, but like you gotta put something up on the table, you know? You gotta like put your money where your mouth is, you know? Like, taking risk is what makes a difference. And, you know, and it's something like I wanted to be helpful, and you have to have skin in the game to be helpful. You know what I mean? And as an artist, being uncomfortable to me is an indication that something good is happening. I mean, it sucks when the cable doesn't work on stage, but you roll with it, you know. But was your question more about the actual writing of the lyrics, or the actual presentation and dealing with the self-consciousness of it? Lyric writing for me is a deep thing. My songwriting changed dramatically also when I found someone who became an editor for my songwriting, who was a brutal editor, you know, and I developed a specific style of songwriting based on the way he edited. And like, I think if I had handed him some other famous songs written by other people, he'd have like lined them out. It was a certain way that I developed, but everything requires for me typically lots of revision. You know, writing is an iterative process for me. Culling, you know, getting many perspectives on it, not other people's perspective. I'm very choosy about who I would present my material to in an editorial capacity, because everyone will have a different opinion, and I don't care about a lot of other people's opinions. Like, I don't want them, you know, but people that I trust, I seek their feedback and I listen to it. It took me a long time to get humble enough to accept people's criticism, but my writing improved astronomically once I did, and sort of met the challenge of that. You know, somebody put it to me once where he literally said, have higher standards for yourself, you know, and it was rough when he said that. But he's like, you should elevate the standards you have for yourself when it comes to writing. And you know, the last thing I'll say is, as far as writing goes, to me, it's like a lot of mechanics that eventually become completely forgotten in place of pure instinct. So it's like cultivating an antenna. It's totally intuitive, and there's a lot of mechanics and trial and error that goes into developing that. But like, each song will teach me something else, and you know, a song will be usually for me it starts with a title. You know, I have a title and I will have no idea what the song is about until I've written it. You know, and I usually, it's more of like psychic detective work than it is something that's, I don't know, it doesn't originate with me, you know, if it's working correctly, I think. And then the last thing I'll say is, if I don't feel a little surprised by it, then it's probably not great. Usually when I've completed something that I think is special, I'm surprised by it and where it ended, where it led, if that makes sense. Yes.
So I was just wondering, because you know, like, you obviously have played in a lot of prisons and like people who are incarcerated, and what was kind of like your reasoning for creating this with the intention of, like you said, to perform to the public, or like those who aren't incarcerated?
Yeah. So as soon as I started doing this work, I immediately felt compelled to want to share what I was experiencing. You know, and I would come home after being on the road, and I would see my friends and family and sort of feel like I was unable to describe what I had seen and experienced. And but I always wanted to tell these stories, and I started writing songs about what I'd heard relatively fast into the process. I wrote these songs long before I wrote the monologues, and I spent a lot of time playing in clubs and telling stories to people in, you know, public, like club audiences and stuff. And at some point, there are a lot of reasons why I wrote Reckless Sun. One of it was I wanted to put some boundaries up around some things. I spent a lot of time just being way too open and emotionally permeable and sort of free with things, and it was difficult. And then also simultaneously, the material the material, the things that I'll have seen and heard in correctional facilities is unbelievably sensitive and needs to be handled with tremendous respect and authenticity and humility. And so for me, writing it was a way of codifying it and saying, this is how far I'll go. You know, and there are other things that, like, I didn't want to necessarily, you know, sometimes go to certain places in front of a public audience where I just didn't think it was necessarily respectful or right, you know, and I wanted to have that for myself. I wanted those parameters for myself. I wanted those boundaries for myself, for my own mental health, and my own sort of like I needed to stabilize the whole thing, like, if that makes sense. It needed to have a structure for me in order to, for what I'm doing to be sustainable. It needed to have a vessel like Reckless Sun. And now I kind of know where I get to live, and it's not as much of a tightrope walk, if that makes sense. And then you also have to play in theaters rather than in clubs and stuff like that. It's like a different kind of vibe. It's like, people are quieter, you know. Like, it's not like a rock club where like stuff is going on, and I like to talk, and so it's just a better setting for what I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So would you say your whole thing is relatively solidified, or does it change kind of based on location and over time?
Yeah, it changes. Especially like, you know, like playing at Landry today, like I could incorporate that into the show, you know, because I had that experience. And Reckless Sun inevitably, so it's a week-long thing we're doing with the LaFon Center, and it's meant to be a sort of a tailored experience to the community I'm visiting. So I'd like to be able to incorporate as much of where I am in what I'm doing. And then I think a show is potentially really dry if I'm kind of just going through the motions with it, and I like to surprise myself, and I like to have fun with it, and I like to ad-lib and make jokes when I can and stuff like that. But the heart of the stories doesn't change. The arc of the show doesn't change. Sometimes I'll play it shorter. Well, I'll sort of do only 6 episodes rather than 9, or I'll do 7, depending on if it needs to be in different time constraints. But the arc is always that way.
And how did you build that skill of ad-libbing where it's appropriate?
Because I never had a script. It's just what I did. I just did it so much. I just did so much bantering with people. And I found early on that the material I was writing was very heavy and potentially depressing. And I understood very quickly that if I didn't make people laugh, they could never handle how far I wanted to go with the music. Because I take things very far with those songs, and it's too much. It pushes people away. If you're just like, hey, I'm gonna make you sad tonight, you know, like it doesn't get received. So I had to develop a whole delivery mechanism for how to get songs of that intensity across to people in a way that it wasn't so totally off-putting, if that makes sense. This side's been so quiet. Anybody have a question over here? Cool.
So, I follow Chris Hedges, and he teaches in prison in New Jersey, and I just wondered if, I mean, it sounds like your work would be something he'd be really interested in, and I just wondered if you interested? Yeah, like if you have heard of his work and
Yeah. Got his number?
I wish.
Yeah.
I know he has people, so I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems like it would be something he'd be really interested in.
Yeah,
I love hearing about his work in prisons. And
he teaches in East Jersey State Prison, right?
Yeah.
Rahway?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend who's done a program with him through Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a thing called the Lifers Group there at East Jersey
Yeah.
State. And so I'm familiar with it, but I've never actually like interacted with him.
Yeah.
But it would be cool. It would be cool.
Yeah. I work with an esoteric Christian outreach into
mean, I'm always trying to make connections with people wherever I travel and so forth, because that's how it keeps going. You know, it's like pass it on, pass the message on. Thank you. Yes.
I love that you said that you kind of found like this. There's a lot of fear in performing. There's a lot of fear of being vulnerable, but you found this like way to normalize fear, and that's something that some of our students and even young therapists, they kind of have this fear of, am I doing the right thing? I just messed up that G chord. Are they going to notice it? Could you provide some like advice on how to normalize that fear and how for fear to not be the stopping point, but how to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the easiest answer is to just play as much as possible, because the more you play, the less pressure there is on each performance. If you play once every 6 weeks and you don't nail it, it's like you got to wait another 6 weeks, and then you're tortured by that memory, you know, for however long. But playing often is the answer to a lot of things, as far as normalizing fear, but also understanding material and how to adapt material to different settings and stuff like that. Because I would also say that the goal is like not to play something like rigidly perfectly. That's not particularly like musically exciting, but it's also like it just doesn't. It's like for me, like it doesn't work. Like to try to play something exactly how it's constructed, you know. And then some days you're like, the room sounds different. It's like you really should play it a step down. You really should play it this way, or like you should change if you're having a hard time with a certain vowel sound on a word. It's like try changing the melody. See, there's all kinds of ways to like maintain a pliability in what you're doing. And then the other thing to like is have a degree of non-reactivity. So like when your stomach like drops into your feet, it's like how do you have that happen without it showing all over your face? And for me, the answer to that question is I just did it so many times. I played so many bad gigs. Oh my God. I have played so many bad gigs. To have like a degree of like stage fluency, it like you have to like kind of pay your dues for it. And in prison, there's a degree of non-reactivity that's unlike anything else I've ever experienced. As far as like, I mean, first of all, prisoners are the most hyper-vigilant group of people of all time. So you could be in a room with 5 guys or 500 guys, and if the tiniest door cracks in the back wall, every single head instantly swivels to it. So if you're not sort of like self-possessed, you cannot maintain anyone's tension whatsoever. So if you hit the wrong chord and all of a sudden you kind of like flip out, you know, it's not that people won't be sympathetic to that, but the key is to just don't go like, you know, like that kind of a thing. Like, at least for me, that's the way I've adapted to it. Some people could probably be very charming with how they would do it. I think if, you know, sometimes making a mistake is an opportunity for a bit, you know, like I try to use anything I can to get a laugh or get a reaction out of people, to make a connection with people, you know. So, but and the other thing is like lick your wounds, man. Like so many bad gigs, and then you just have to like cry in the mirror and say like I'm gonna keep going, and then like do it, and then you like, I mean, that's for real, man. Oh my God, and then just keep trying. But it weeds people out, as you know. Like, it's not for everybody to perform. A lot of people that they don't make it, you know, like so. But yeah, you gotta be a little resilient.
Fight that constant need for perfectionism.
Yeah, and I also think that like it's fun to surprise myself when I'm playing. Like when something really cool happens that I didn't plan, you know, it's exciting. And then the trick is to not try to replicate that the next time. You know, you're like, oh, I said that word that really cool way that last show. And it's like, if I try to do it again, it won't work because it wasn't intuitive, it wasn't spontaneous. And then sometimes a mistake will be a gateway into something really, really cool. You know, it'll provide an access point to some other way of handling the next part of the music that all of a sudden can be really dynamic and you know, and exciting for the audience and for me. But like, I know that I have to like feel that tightrope walk for the whole thing to be kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say good, but like to feel inspired. Yeah. And then sometimes mistakes are cool, you know? They like will add something to it and they feel natural, you know, and they add personality, and people don't necessarily know it's a mistake unless you make a big face and freak out, you know? But I made a lot of mistakes tonight.
We all make mistakes.
There you go. There you go. That's a true story.
It's great.
Yeah. That day changed my life. Any other questions that anyone has? You've all been very patient listening to me ramble all night long.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much.